Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending another Excel Like a Pro class. We have Clayton here, who's going to help be the moderator again, like the last time. The way this format will work is I will be presenting on conditional formatting and pivot tables and charts today. The first half of this class will be focusing on conditional formatting. The second half will focus more on the pivot tables and charts. If you have any questions, please do contact Clayton via chat, and he will follow up with me on a question when I pause for any questions. Thank you very much for your time. I don't want to waste any of it, so I'm just going to hop right in, and we're going to start talking about conditional formatting. So Excel has a lot of very powerful tools in it to make the data a little bit easier to read. I have a bunch of different types of data sets to go through. I'm going to focus on different aspects of what conditional formatting can do and some tricks associated with how to kind of maximize its use. Just to make sure we're on the same page, I'm going to be using Microsoft Excel 2016. So if you have 2013 or newer, you'll find that it looks very similar. The conditional formatting aspect of it lives in the Home tab of the ribbon bar here, and it's right next to the general number formatting. It's right here in a little conditional formatting block. It's a very useful tool, and I hope you have a lot of fun with it. So we're going to start off here with some sales orders. This may be something that is very common type of data that is input into Excel. It does have a little bit of a header here. I've highlighted it to make it a little easier for everyone to see. And then underneath it, we have the order number, the date of the order, sales amount, the number of widgets, and who sold it and where it was sold. So this type of data, you might want to highlight certain aspects of it. For example, what state it's from, or the number of widgets sold, or the amount, or when it was sold, if there's any type of data associated with that. So we're going to go ahead, and the quickest way to get into this is we're going to select, say we want to highlight the state. So we'll select the row states, and we'll click on conditional formatting. And it pops up this nice little dialog. And in this dialog, we can go through and we can select a bunch of different things. There's some automated options here. You can choose any one of these. For example, if you wanted to highlight data that is duplicated. In this case, it's not very useful because all of the data is states, so you're going to run across quite a bit of them. You can also try to find ones that are unique, if they're all unique. So you have a lot of options here. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight rules that are equal to, in this case, we're just going to use WA for Washington. And this will go through and it'll select all of the cells that are associated or equal to Washington. And we can do the same thing with Nevada, if we type Nevada, or California, type California. This is pretty useful, but it does limit the highlighted text to just that particular row. What I would recommend we do in a case like this, if we want to highlight particular sales data from a particular state, is we're going to go ahead and create a cell over here. I'm going to create it in J2 and call highlight state. And then underneath it, I'm going to kind of make this a highlighted cell as a neutral so that we can see it easier. That's where I'm going to be inputting my data. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the entire area of data that I do want to take a look at. And I'm going to hit my conditional formatting here. I'm going to create a new rule. And I'm going to use a formula to determine which cells to format. Now, the way that a formula will work is it will look through the data and any values of the particular formula will be used to determine if a value is, or the conditional formatting should be applied. I'm going to go ahead and select the top cell of the area that I've selected. In this case, it's going to be I2. And when I select I2, you will notice that it'll come up with a $sign. In Excel, when you use the $signs, that specifies a specific address in the cell. So that if you were to copy the data across multiple rows or across multiple columns, the reference point or that address for the cell would stay the same for the entire data set that you're using. In this case, I'm going to set it up so that it will highlight all states that are of a certain value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the $sign
from just in front of the row number, because I'm going to be looking at all of the cells in column I for a specific value. So I delete that $sign. So the formula is now equal to $I2. And then I'm going to hit another equals, and I'm going to specify a particular cell in the worksheet to use as a reference. And I'll get back to why that's important in a minute. Now I'm going to use this as a specific cell, so I'm going to leave the $signs in place to make sure the addressing is specific. Now the format here, to make it easier for everybody to see, I'm going to highlight it in red. You can change this format color to any type of color you want to make it easier for the people who are viewing the particular sheet to see it. When I click on OK, what it's doing now is it's looking at the cell J3 and it's trying to find any of the values that are in this column I that are the same as what's in J3. So if I type OR for the state, it's going to go through and it's going to highlight all of the rows that are equal to the value OR that are starting in the column I. Now I can do the same thing here, and I can type Nevada, or I can type California, or I can type Washington, and it will go through the entire data and pick out cells that match that particular value. Now, once you've created any type of conditional formatting in this sheet, you can see all of the existing conditional formatting that is in the sheet if you click on the conditional formatting and you go down to Manage Rules. This will go through the entire sheet and it will tell you all of the rules that are currently being applied to the sheet. It's important to know that these are applied in a top-down order, meaning the one on the very top is applied first, followed by the one underneath it, by the one underneath it. So if you have many different conditional formatting rules, the order in which these rules are displayed will have an impact on what colors are displayed in the cell. So for example, if we go back to the one that we created earlier before we had the technical difficulties, you will notice that if I change this to be the same formula that was in the previous one, so I'm going to have all of the cells that are in column I be compared to what's in the J3 cell and then highlighted in orange. And I click on OK, and I click on Apply. You'll notice that there isn't any change. But if I were to change the order in which these particular conditional formatting rules are applied, it will change what is being highlighted. The reason I'm pointing this out is when you do a lot of conditional formatting inside of any particular document, you will find that this order has a big impact on what you see on the screen currently. I'm going to take a second here to pause due to the technical difficulties we experienced a little bit ago to see if there are any questions or if you want me to highlight anything that I have talked about to this point. So Clayton, can you quickly take a quick survey and see if anybody's asked anything?
As of this moment, we don't have any questions.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on. I'm going to go ahead and delete these two rules, and I'm going to apply that. Now, let's say that we want to look through this particular sales data that we have, and we want to look for values that are above or below a particular number. So we'll go ahead and do conditional formatting again. We're going to use Manage Rules, and we're going to create a new rule. We're going to use a formula again to determine what's happening here. And we're going to use the cells that are in the column D, the sales amount. We're going to determine if it's above or below a particular value. We're going to say D2. We want to make sure that we use the $sign to make sure that we're specifying that only column D is the value that we're looking at. And we're going to say that it is greater than, let's say, $120. Right? And then the format for this is we want this to be, let's say it's a happy thought, so we click on OK for green. and we apply. And any value that is higher than that particular whatever dollar figure that we put in there, $120 in this case, will be highlighted in green. We can be a little more specific. We can do the same thing we did with the states. Instead of saying a particular value for that. So when we're editing the rules, if you double click on the rule, it'll pop up and allow you to edit it. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do the same thing we did with the state, and we're going to select a cell. In this case, it's going to be J4 to use as the value that we're going to determine as the higher or lower. I'm going to go ahead and use an input cell. It just changes the formatting really quickly on a cell so that you know that that's the cell that you're going to be inputting data into. Let's say I want to say that I want to look for any sale order that's higher than 150, and it will pull up, or less than 150, and it'll pull up that information. If I want to manage the rule again, and we'll switch it and apply it, then it'll go the other direction. So this is a quick way that you can use conditional formatting to highlight particular data values in your data to find information. In the same way, you can, if you have a large data set and you're trying to find particular trends or any ideas in it, you can use a couple of different features that are in conditional formatting that are useful. This is something that is new from 2013 on inside of Excel that can be kind of powerful to quickly set up some information for various people in your office. So we're going to use something called data bars. And inside the data bars, you have a couple of options. You have one that'll fill the data depending on the average and the maximum and minimum of the data set that you're looking at. In this case, it's the entire block of random numbers here. And the first option is a gradient fill. So what that means is it'll have a different color set that kind of get darker the higher up it goes, or the like. You can also choose to do solid fills as well. So we'll go ahead and we're going to choose a solid fill option. And when we do that, you'll notice that what this does with the data is it'll pull out, it'll do an analysis of all the data inside of here, and it'll highlight the cells that are a little bit more, a little bit less, so that you can get a quick picture of a huge data set where you're seeing the larger or smaller values. Another thing to notice about this particular type of data set is you can, if you go to the Manage Rules section, when you pull this up, when you set one of these data bars, you can actually say, I don't want to see the number value that is inside of each of these cells. I just want to be able to see the bar length. And you click on the Show Bar Only option. And when you do that and apply it, it will go through the data and it won't show any of the numbers. It'll just show that bar length. So if you're providing data that you need to be a little bit, you don't want to show the number in it, this is a way you can do that. Just be aware that once you've done this, the actual data value is still visible inside of the formula bar, but it is not visible actually in the areas that you are doing the conditional formatting in. Again, the way that that is done is if in the conditional formatting, under the Manage Rules, if you open up the Properties tab, you can do that by double-clicking to enter into the properties. You can go down and select in this Edit the Rule Description section, the one that says Show Bar Only, and then you can click on OK and then Apply, and it will do that. And conversely, if you find data that's like that and you want to see the numbers, you can pull that up. Areas where this may be useful is if, for example, you were to go back to, or you were to have a list of people who had a salary range, and for some reason you needed to highlight or have a visual representation of how people are stacking in that particular aspect. You could select the salaries and do a similar type of data bar. And obviously this type of data is the type of data you do not want to share. with everybody as far as letting everybody know what each person is making. So you just go into the edit rule. Again, you click on the show bar only, and you click on OK and apply. And when you do that, it will take out the data so you can have a quick visual representation of how each of the people stacks up, so to speak, but not in a way that anybody is specifically aware of what the values are. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that. Are there any questions at this point before I move on?
There are no questions at this time.
All right. So the other thing you can do with conditional formatting is you can compare data values. So if you have two lists of manually entered data, you know one of them is to be the correct data set, and you want to just check to see if there is an error on the other side. You can quickly do this with Excel. And so we're going to go into really quickly how that is done right now. So I'm going to create a new rule, and we're going to use a formula to pull this out. You're going to use this formula, which is a greater than or less than, meaning that if the value is different in any way, it's going to highlight it. You're going to select the first cell and followed by the next cell. And you're going to delete the $ for the row. And the format we're going to choose for this one is going to be a yellow. Okay, and apply. So what this does is it goes through this list and it says, hey, which of these two cells are different? And it's actually looking for changes in the text. So it's a quick way to find out if you had somebody who's typing manually, typing data in. If you have a set list that you know what the, let's say, company name should be, you can quickly check to see if there are any mistakes in the company name using this particular formula. So it's very useful to have and to be aware of when doing this type of data checking. At this time, I'm going to transition into talking a little bit about pivot tables and what pivot tables can be used for and how to use that data. If you do want me to go into a little more depth on conditional formatting or want to look at a specific type of spreadsheet, please don't hesitate to send me. You can reach me at nick@coopertech.net with any questions, and I'll be more than happy to go back over and deal with a one-on-one, case-by-case type questions that you may or may not have. So we're going to move on to the pivot tables and how to use that particular function of Excel. To do this, what I've done is I've gone ahead to get you over to my census data. I've gone ahead and pulled data from the 2012 census. This is the most recent census data that's available. And I pulled it for the counties that are surrounding my office, so Santa Cruz, Monterey, San Benito counties. And this is the data that comes out of that particular source. It has a bunch of information, and it is not particularly easy to see or understand. So what pivot tables do in a very short summation is it takes the data, a large aggregate amount of data, and makes it easier to analyze and look for trends or look for any type of specific aspect of the data that you're looking to get some more information on. There are a couple of things to be aware of. A pivot table will only work if all of the data that you're looking at is in concurrent columns, meaning that A, B, C through the end of whatever the data set you're looking at actually has data in it, and it is only really effective if the data is entered in each of the rows as well. So there are some limitations for the type of data that you can use to do an analysis of. So what we're going to go ahead and do is, this is an entire export from the census data. So I'm going to select the entire sheet. You can do that by clicking up in the upper left above the number 1 and next to the letter A. And we're going to go ahead and jump into the pivot tables. The pivot tables can be found in the home ribbon over in the data or in the insert section. And in here, next to the recommended chart, you will find something called a pivot chart. So you go ahead and you can click on the pivot chart, and it will pop up with a dialog menu. And it will ask you to select a table, which you've already selected, and then it will ask you where you want to put the pivot table. You can either put it in the new worksheet, or you can put it inside of an existing worksheet and specify the location. It also asks you if you want to add something to a data model. That's something that's only really applicable for later versions of Excel. I'm going to go ahead and just put the data into a new worksheet. I'm going to click on OK. And when I do this, it'll come up with a little box here on a new worksheet. You'll notice we're in sheet number 1. And I'll have a pivot table box and a chart box. You can choose to just do a pivot table, or you can choose to do a chart, but I found it better to have both. This way you can kind of see what type of information is available, and it allows you to kind of design what type of information you want to explore in depth. So on the right side, when you create this pivot table, you will see a pivot chart field, and they pop up. And it has a whole bunch of the information. All of this information that comes up inside of this particular menu is actually all of the headers of information that is found in the originating data set that you're using. And these are the type of information that you're going to use to manipulate the data itself. So we're going to go ahead and use our geographic area name. The geographic area in this case is the counties. And we're going to pull this data down into the axis categories. What that does is you'll notice as soon as I put that information into the axis or the categories, it shows up on the left here in the row labels. These are the values that are found inside of that particular column on this originating data sheet. The next aspect of this is we can take any of the other information that's in that particular originating data set and then put that, whatever's found in that particular column or in that particular type of data, into this field. So we're going to take sales, because why not? And we're going to go ahead and stick it into the values. Now, what this does is it will initially just do a count. So when I put this in here, what it has done is gone through all of the data that's inside of the data set that we're looking at, and it's just counted the number of data entries that are in each particular county. When I set this up, you'll notice that it has each of the counties as well as the number of actual unique data sets in there, and it gives us a grand total on it. All of these are somewhat manipulatable. You can change those, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. It also creates this nice little graph, and this graph will change if the data itself that you're pulling information from changes. But when you're talking about, let's say, sales, you're really typically going to end up talking about actual dollars, right? And you don't want to have necessarily the count of unique data. You actually want to know how much data or how much sales is being done in each geographic area. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to go down here to the values section, and we're going to go ahead and click on that and open up the value field settings. When you click on the valued field settings, it will pull up another menu bar that has some more options in here. It summarizes the value by certain aspects of it. You can choose sum, meaning you're going to total all of the data that's of that particular type, but you can do an average of the data, you can do the maximum, minimum, or you can do a multiplication table from it. What we're going to do now is we're actually just going to use the sum. So what this is going to do is going to go through each of the counties, and it's going to total the number that's found in the sales column and give us what that total number is. But since we're working with dollars, here I would recommend that we click on the number format section. Instead of just using a general number, we're actually going to use currency. And we're going to go ahead and just leave it at the standard, which is the $ with the 2 decimal places. We click on OK. We click on OK again. And what that does is it will go through now, and we'll see that in the initial graph that we had, it looked pretty even across all of the counties. But now that we have specified that we're going to total the sales volume, we notice that there is a trend here that San Francisco County, San Mateo County, and Santa Clara County, of all of the counties, have the largest dollar figure associated with them. But let's say the data that we're looking at, we want to get a little more granular. We want to see maybe which industries are doing better. So we can take from our pivot field, chart field section, we can take another item that we want to look at and compare the data that we have. So we're going to go ahead and there's a couple of places we can put this. We could put this in the axis categories and make a whole nother subset of data, or we can put this in the legend series. What the legend series does is when I pop this in here, it creates on the chart, it creates a color-coded bar based on what the industry type is in this case, because we are doing with census data, so that's the nature of the data itself. Now, when we do this, this creates a graph that's really complex and hard to read. But one of the things we can do with this pivot chart itself is we can actually format the chart to make it a little easier for everybody to read. So the way we do that is we click on the design. It gives you a whole different options of automated. You can choose some very specific standard design. But what we're going to do now is we're actually going to change the chart type. Instead of having a clustered column, meaning that each of the value data sets are put into a column right next to the previous one, we're going to use something called a stacked column. This will stack all of the data for a particular county in a vertical manner, just separating things out by color. And when we do this, you'll notice it does make the data itself a little bit easier to read, and it gives you a little bit more information about where things are. Now, the powerful thing about pivot tables is that even though you create a data analysis for a particular area like this, it allows you to quickly manipulate what you're looking at. So for example, here we're looking at the breakdown of different types of industry as far as the sales volume in each county. Well, we can change the way we're thinking about it and what the type of data we're looking for. We can take the type of industry, and we can put it in the access side, meaning the category, and we can take the geographic section and put it in the legend area. And what this will do is it'll allow us to, instead of looking at how each county is broken up into the industry section, this will take each industry section and say, hey, how does this break down per county? So the pivot tables can be used quite effectively to do this type of quick analysis and data manipulation. One thing that is useful about this particular data analysis tool that does come in Excel is that you can create a quick dashboard where you import the data into your data set section that you can update with time. So for example, if you do have sales history for your company and it's broken up by a geographic section, if you're just adding more sales data to the base form, you can break this up and every time you open this pivot table, you can just click on the Analyze tab and refresh the data, and it will automatically take the new data that you've input and then adjust it on your Excel sheet. So this can be a very quick way to create a dashboard for sharing internally inside of an organization with your CEO or higher ups, where you're taking the data and you're doing a day-to-day analysis of it, or week-to-week, or a month-to-month, or quarter-to-quarter based analysis of the data that you have available. The other thing to be aware of this is that, let's say you've created that graph and you're happy with the way it looks and the information that it's pulling out, but you know, gosh darn it, you want to look at some other aspect of this and you want to be able to create it in a way that is readily acceptable to anybody who has access to the Excel file. We can go ahead and create another pivot table. Again, I'm just going to select the entire sheet of data here. I'm going to click on the insert, we're going to insert another pivot table. But this time, because we're creating a dashboard or a particular sheet in which we're going to use to quickly analyze an existing large data set like this, instead of creating a new worksheet, we're actually going to use an existing worksheet. And when we do this, if you click on the location area, it's only going to work if you're inside of this particular sheet. So what you need to do is you need to click on this little arrow pointing to the upper left corner, and that will collapse down the pivot table menu bar. And you click on sheet 1, and then you select a space in your sheet 1. Now I will caution you that you want to leave a little bit of space above it, just in case there is extra data that gets filled in your existing chart. Let's say you expand out into a new sales area. But we're going to go ahead and just select this cell, which is A39, and we're going to say that's where we want the pivot chart to go. And we uncollapse that menu, and we click on OK. And what that does is that'll stick in another pivot chart, or a pivot table in the chart, and it will do it in the area that we specify. Now, whenever we modify data, we'll start putting data into that range that we have specified. So now let's say that we wanted to, instead of looking at the sales, we want to look at the number of employees, for example. Again, we can do the same type of pulling data down into the area of analysis. But let's say we wanted to take a look at this by gender. Maybe we want to see who is the owner. Is it a male or a female? And we want to look at the number of employees. So we select the value here, and this is going to count the number of paid employees. And we want to say we're going to do it by geographic area, right? Now again, what this is doing is it's going through the data, and it's only counting the number of cells that have data in them. It's not actually counting the number of employees yet. What we need to do is we need to change that count number of employees to a sum of the employees. So we go back and we select the sum, and we click on OK. And what that does now is it's going to go through, it's going to actually count the number of employees. So this is the number of employees that are in firms throughout the county, but we've added a filter here. And what that means is that we can click on the filter here. Oops, I think I grabbed the wrong code. Gender code, meaning a gender code. Get rid of that. And this allows you to go through and you can select the data and filter it based on your filtering criteria. In this case, let's say we want to take a look at just female-owned firms inside of these counties. We'll see that Monterey County is highly specialized for that, as San Francisco or Santa Clara County, excuse me. So this is how you can add a filter quickly to the data and manipulate it. And this will create a dashboard, so to speak, of the data set that you're looking at. So that's kind of what I was going to talk about today as far as pivot tables go, how to create them, how to quickly do some manipulation of them. I look forward to any questions or comments that may come in regards to this. Please feel free to contact me at any time, and I will follow up with you with any specific information. Clayton, before I end this webinar, are there any questions or any comments that have come in that I should be aware of?
Nothing. At this time, we have had no comments or questions.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end our webinar today. I want to thank everybody for attending. If you do have any questions, comments, please do not hesitate to let me know, and I will follow up with you as I am available. All right. Thank you all.